So back in the late 60s and early 70s, a whole lot of us from the West started going to India, not knowing what a magical world. I mean, we had no idea what a magical world we were going to enter into at Meherazad and Meherabad and being with the Mandali. I mean, for myself, I thought, the, these would be these very high spiritual souls, having been with God for. So I was saying that, I thought these would be these great souls having been with God Himself for, decades and decades, and I was so relieved to find that the Mondley were just like my favorite aunts and uncles, and I mean, but Vesta was one of those of us that went at that time, and she had the great good fortune of spending a lot of time at Meherazad. I mean, she practically lived there. She being a nurse, she was able to help Dr. Goher, and together they ran the clinic at Meherazad, the medical clinic, and Mehera just adored
On
her.
my iPhone?
Hello? Oh. So anyway, I was going to ask Vesta to share maybe a little bit of how she came to Baba, and then some of what it was like for a young person to, through the eyes of a young person, to be around especially the women Mandali, but the men Mandali, being around them as a young person, and what they were like. And so, somewhere around here is Vesta. Vesta, it's all yours.
J Bob, everybody. Um, First of all, a couple of things.
Can we get you, hit your video?
Uh, I'm laying on my left side in bed, and I look like one of those dogs in those pictures.
Oh, really? Well, we
Yeah,
don't
I
mind.
sent you. I sent you on your email a picture of me on my birthday, September 18th in 2021 last year, when I heard I had a cellular imbalance. So I don't know if you can put that up.
Well, you can't quite get yourself in there. It'd be great to see you.
Okay.
Okay.
But no,
Yeah.
I haven't been to the beauty salon for decades.
Yeah. We get a little bit more of your face. She's been in and out. She's had all sorts of chemotherapy and all that. So this is a rough time for her. But
Nothing's rough for me, brother. I'm a Viking warrior in Baba's name.
yeah. Hey, we'll get a little bit more of your face.
Oh, crap. Oh, I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't want you to think bad of me, you guys.
Oh,
Crap is a wonderful word.
We love
Okay.
you. We love you, Vesta.
What's up?
All right, Meta, here. Uh,
Prop your head up
Betty
with some
and
pillows.
Betty, Jeff, and Jasmine have been asked by me personally to keep me on the rails because for 6 months I've had a cellular imbalance and I've had to go daily radiation and 3 rounds of chemotherapy. And the first round was double because I said, Baba wants me to be aggressive. And they said, how aggressive? I said, I don't care. Double, whatever it is you're going to give me, double it up. And they went and checked and actually consulted with some of the top cancer experts in the country to see if they could double up the chemo that they chose, that Baba chose for me and prompted me to say to double up. And they did, and I was able by his grace to tolerate the chemo double for the first round, which was vicious. And then my lab work started to go down. My hemoglobin went from the high 20s to the lows to 7.2. And if it had gone to 7, I would have had to gone to the hospital for transfusions. But Baba saved me just in the nick of time. So I was able to go through another round of chemo that was different, but as strong. And by Baba's grace, although I struggled with horrific radiation burns, he allowed me to go through everything. And my last radiation and chemo was February 24th. I woke up on his birthday and didn't have to have my big butt carried out on a 4-point sheet and dumped in the back of my car and driven to chemo or radiation, whatever was going on that day, or both, and dumped into a wheelbarrow and carted into City of Hope or the Oncology Institute. So I've had
Hey,
a lot of
so,
fun, and poor people have had to carry me in. But anyway,
hey,
so
so
I've
tell us
asked,
a little bit of how you came to Baba, but
well,
can you
I am.
lower your camera a little bit there? We're just getting your
Oh my
glasses.
God, you're still a pain. I remember you being a pain.
I'm persistent.
That hasn't changed. But
Yeah.
anyway, what you're looking at is a chemo face with lots of steroids. So I've got that sweet little moon face reflecting Baba's love. So I hope you all get it.
Okay, good.
All right. So anyway, I've asked Jeff, I've asked Betty, and I've asked Jasmine Patel to keep me on the rails, because you just saw how I went off, right? That's typical with a chemo brain. So they're going to keep me straight and narrow. And Jasmine has agreed, if I misstate or misspeak, that she's going to clear up anything that I make a mistake on or am not clear on.
Yeah.
See why I don't want you to see me? Look, I mean, this is why
Yeah.
I don't feel comfortable.
Oh, you're fine. You're fine. We'll take you as you are.
All
Otherwise,
right.
we've got those electrodes that we can that Jasmine has control over.
Well, she's already done that to me. That's why I am the way I am. It's
Yeah.
a Persian secret.
Okay, go
Anyway,
for it.
okay, so anyway, I'm like many of you, because I've talked with many of you, we've come to realize, I think, that our first breath that we take is the first step to our journey to Him, because we chose this birth and these parents and this life according to what Baba told us, according to what we need karmically, but to unwind our samskaras, but most of all to bring us to Him. And I'm starting to realize, because I've been laying flat on my left side in my bed because of my diagnosis and the location, and I now call it my lotus garden, so use your imagination. And so it's difficult for me to sit, stand, walk, because the area is so painful and so burned now with radiation. So I've had a lot of time to think about things and reflect on life, because I haven't watched TV, even though I'm in love with Rachel Maddow. I haven't watched TV for months, and I've had a lot of time to kind of reflect on my life. And my bedroom is like a sanctuary with over 20 incredible images of Meherabad plastered everywhere. There's no escape, brothers and sisters. Once he catches you, no escape. So one of the things I realized is, as a child, I created a happy place and was very engaged in the magical thinking of children, which I thought everybody did, because I had a very active imagination. And even my dreams as an adult and as a child are kind of in technicolor. And they always had kind of a lesson or something spiritual or magical or fun or whatever about them. And they were always about God or Jesus or something that was tender and sweet and loving and kind. And much like the beautiful, the most exquisite memorial we saw about Zoe Newell that our dear sweet brother Jamie put together about our loving sister and all those who helped. Many of us have struggled as she did and experienced many of the things she did. And a lot of us were blessed with parents who were willing to intervene when they found out certain things about our life that we hadn't talked about. Zoe didn't escape that, but she didn't escape God. And we have to remember that none of us can escape God, whether it's this life or another lifetime. So you might as well get it in the Advent. But anyway, I had similar experiences like many of the women here, and I'm not going to go into it because this is not about triggering anybody or the experience that was had, but just know that it had me create kind of a happy place. And I created my twin, who wasn't named Vesta, but I was learning Spanish, and Vista meant view. So I named this little twin Vista because I felt she could view my life. And when it got too much for me or upsetting or painful, I let this take over because my job from a dream I was told was to take care of the little sweet child inside me and never let her get hurt. And that I was to kind of be her guardian in a way. So I created Vesta to be this bold kind of character that when somebody bullied me or slapped me or whatever, this that one was the one who did it. But my little Vesta was the one who would take my little girl up on the hillsides across from my house, and I dance all over the hillside because I knew as a child, from the time I was probably 6 or 7, that God walked the earth. I knew that Jesus had come again because I was raised in a Lutheran household. I'm Norwegian. So I would go where it was private, either along the cliff side of the house of my property where the house and pool was, or I'd walk down, I'd slide down the cliff. I'd jump on the edge of the cliff and break off a hunk of dirt and surf down 40 feet to the street, cross the street, go up to the water tanks on the other hill, and I'd dance with God. And I was always watched my feet because I was certain his feet were on the other end. In the bottom of his shoes, I saw shoes. I wasn't aware of sandals at the time. I saw God's shoes dancing along with my feet. So I had kind of I'm not saying I was mystical. Please don't misunderstand me. But there was kind of mystical dust that kind of, I don't know, entered my life and kind of helped me kind of get through my childhood. But as I entered school and got older, peer pressure's there, all kinds of stuff goes on. But when I was 8 years old, from 7 to 8 after school, I used to go 3 blocks away from my grammar school because I was in 3rd grade. And I'd go to my auntie's house who was in the end stages of brain cancer. And what I would do after school is I would get her something to drink or whatever, and then I'd go lay down in her bed till my mom came and picked me up. Unfortunately, she passed away when I was 8, and I was extremely close to her because my mom and her were best friends. So for probably from the time I was 8 till I was 10, 3 or 4 nights a week while I was dreaming, I would sit up in bed because I knew Jesus had sent this golden orb to my window. And I would sit in my bed and shrink till I was about 6 or 8 inches tall. Tall is the right word, or big? Anyway, it doesn't matter. I shrunk down to about a 6-inch size. This is all in my head. I'm not saying it really happened. I'm just saying, as a child with magical thinking, who was in a lot of pain of losing her aunt, who struggled watching her mom suffer and try to not cry in front of her, and who would come in bed and hold her sometimes, and we'd both sob at the loss of this wonderful woman in our lives. So anyway, I'd shrink down in my mind, and I'd be able to get really, really thin, which pisses me off that I wasn't able to do that when I was in my 40s and 50s. But anyway, I did it as a child, and I was able to slide through a louver window and get into that orb. And my aunt would be sitting on a seat with Jesus, both across from each other, and they'd take me up to the stars and show me the moon and, all that kind of stuff. That's how magical my thinking was. And I really believe this was happening. But at the same time, and I can't say this was anything other than that magical, mystical dust that every now and then I was lucky to be sprinkled with, and which I'm sure many of you have had many times in your lifetime. Some of them we recognize, some of them we missed, and some of them we just weren't even aware they were there. But that was something divine in our life, either guiding us or helping us or blessing us. That's just the way I think about it. I never heard Meherabad mention magic dust or mystical dust, so please don't think I'm speaking for Meherabad. I'm talking from a perspective of a young child. So anyway, at the same time, Jesus would come when I had my face planted in my pillow, just weeping over my aunt. And during the summertime was my favorite time for this to happen because my hair would be wet from swimming before we went to bed. And my mom always put it in a thick plait down my back. So when Jesus would come, and sit on my bed, he'd sometimes scoot up to like right around where my thighs met my trunk. And he'd lean on his right side across my abdomen with his right shoulder on my chest. And he'd pull my plait out and he'd open up my braid and he'd pull my hair and he'd take my hair and go like this. And he'd do that until it was dry. And then Jesus would plait my hair back up again, put the band on and lay it across my pillow. And then he'd just stroke me until I fell asleep. Now, please, I don't want anybody calling me and saying, oh, how wonderful Jesus came to visit you. That may or may not be true. That's above my pay grade to declare. But in my childlike magical imagination, Jesus was there for me because I love Jesus so much and actually thought my dance partner was Jesus, but I knew it might be the second coming and it might be another God. So I just accepted it as Jesus. So fast forward to 19. Okay, am I missing something? May I have 10 seconds to think about something so I don't miss something important? I can't hear you, Jeff. So somebody give me 15 seconds and tell me when I'm okay, because I'll get back on track, but I don't want to miss something important because I've forgotten it. All right, so let me think. So my aunt dies. So that, oh, okay. So then by then it's getting into my teen years and I'm subject to peer pressure and I kind of forget about my childhood and all that stuff because now I'm coming into teenage, my hormones are raging. I think I'm so damn smart and I'm smarter than my parents and everybody else. So I leave my childhood behind and enter adulthood with still a magical, mystical thinking and still knowing I have to guard my child. But I'm not thinking about dancing on the hill anymore or any of that kind of stuff or going into this globe. It just goes by the wayside. So I enter my teenage years. Oh, okay. So just as a little background into my family, my father was in the entertainment industry, and I've rarely told this to anybody, but it came out in Mehera's tea, so I can't leave it out because several people have asked me to talk about it. And it's just something that if you grow up with a bricklayer and a painter, you don't go around talking about your dad painting houses and laying brick. But anyway, my father was in the entertainment industry. And when he was on a U.S. Navy ship, he used to put on plays for everybody. And he was a stand-up comic. He was hysterical. So anyway, where was I, Jeff?
You're getting up into high school, kind of.
Oh, okay. So high school. But what was I saying?
Well, you hadn't quite. You said you
It
were going
was
to.
Betty.
how you found out about Barbara through Raquel.
Oh, right. Thank you, everybody. God, I love the women from the tea. You guys are awesome. Hi, Irene. I love you so much. And hi, little. Irene's one of my contacts with Baba. She's helped usher me there. And she says I helped usher her, so we were both ushers. I don't use usherette because it implies that they're less than an usher. So usher, get over it. Anyway, so my dad was in the entertainment industry, and after the Navy, he walked into Howard Koch's office, who ran. It was either Universal or one of those big movie, whatever they call them. So he walks in because my dad was what could have been a twin for. God, how can I forget? He could have been a twin for Tyrone Power. He was Tyrone Power's double for years. And Tyrone Power in the 40s was huge. He was like the love actor. So my dad, you can imagine how handsome my dad was. So anyway, he walks into Howard Koch's office and he's smoking a cigarette because Tyrone smoked. And he sits down on a chair. He just walks past the secretary and he says, "You don't have to tell him, I'm going to surprise him." He says, "It's Tyrone here." He says to Howard Koch's secretary, so he doesn't get stopped and she realized maybe there's a differentiation. So he walks into the office. He sits in the chair in front of Howard's desk, and he actually has the guts. I was going to say the B word. Thank you, Baba. He actually has the guts to put his feet up on Howard's desk and start chatting to him as if he's Tyrone Power. So I get my guts from my Norwegian side, but my dad was pretty gutsy as well, although he was a woof around my mom because he knew better. So anyway, my dad started off as Tyrone Power's double and then went into the movie industry and ended up being a director and all this kind of stuff. And he happened to be working on a movie while I was taking care of a very well-known actress's father-in-law. The movie happened to be, you're going to laugh when you hear this because only Baba could do this, Myra Breckenridge with Raquel Welch. Now, if any of you saw Myra Breckenridge, either you had your finger down your throat, you were on acid, or you walked out halfway. Or you watched the whole thing and walked away shaking your head. I mean, it was such a bizarre movie. So anyway, I'm taking care of Raquel Welch's father-in-law in the ICU unit of St. Joseph's Hospital in Burbank. And because my dad's in that industry, and because in the 50s, we used to have luau's at the party, and I met everybody from, I was a little kid. I was in, like 4, 5, 6, and all the movie women, would always bring me little hair bows and little rings and little outfits and that kind of stuff, which I love. But I mean, I'm talking Judy Garland, Elizabeth Taylor, Jane Mansfield, all the greats from those late 40s to the early 50s. So I don't know who, please forgive me. I have no filters anymore. Ay, Father help. But
Perfectly
anyway,
fine.
what?
Perfectly fine.
I don't want to insult anybody or anybody walk away and say, why would anybody listen to her? Because there's some sweet stuff in here.
Yeah.
I'm just, Pendu said I was a sweet child but a naughty girl, and Irene Ives can testify to this. And if my nephew's on, please don't tell stories out of church. But anyway, he did tell my gynecological oncologist, who said he wished he had an auntie like me, and my nephew pipes up and says, oh, brother, it's been quite a ride. But anyway, so I'm taking care of her father-in-law. I got back on track my own, Betty. Ha ha ha. But anyway, so I'm taking care of her father-in-law, and she walks into the ICU, and I don't see any nurse stop her. She walks over to the glass enclosed room, and I'm doing a treatment that's pretty gross because he had a severe surgery, a neck resection. And so it's a pretty gross treatment to clean that up and re-damage it. And she walks in the middle of it. And I looked up at her and I see this absolutely gorgeous, big busted woman. And I look at her and I'm thinking, why is she standing there? First of all, I've got an open wound. She's not gowned up. Who let her in the room? So I turned and I raised my voice and I said, I don't know who you are. I don't know who let you in, but you need to get out immediately. You've exposed this man to germs that should not be exposed on a wound like this. She didn't say jack to me. She turned around. No, actually, she actually said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. I didn't think about that. She turned around and she left. I don't know, about a half hour later, I was done. Never thought a thing about it until I got out of the room. And the nurses didn't like me because, mind you, I'm 19 years old at this time. I graduated early from high school. I was top of my class. I was chosen out of my nursing class to be trained to do open heart surgery and become a technician, and then get my license for inhalation therapy. See how Baba works? Because without this, I wouldn't have been asked to stay at Meherazad. So he's prepared us from our first birth. Never, ever, ever forget that. Our first birth we took was because of him, for him, and ends up with him in our last breath. Everything that happens from the last breath comes from him, passes through us, goes through many people in our samskaric knot, but goes back to him after he processes it and moves it from us so we get closer to him. And never forget what Erich told me one morning before the trust car left after tea when we were packing up all the stuff to put in the trunk. I asked him, because Mehera had been telling me at breakfast that morning something about the path. And I asked him about the path and how to stay on the path and find it and stuff. And he started laughing. I said, why is that so funny? You always find everything I ask so funny. He says, because you're so naive and innocent, but you're so smart. He said, that's a good question. He said, but if you think about it, it's dumb, actually. He said, don't you realize once he grabbed you and pushed you down at his feet, you found the end of the path. You're at the goal. Why do you worry about the path anymore? Now the path follows you because you found the goal. He grabbed you up and pushed you down on his feet and has got his hands on the back of your head, and he's not going to let you up. So where was I, Jeff? Why did I go off there?
Well, you're now a nurse, so how did you hear about Baba now?
Okay, so my dad and Raquel have gotten extremely close because my dad has been in the industry since before the war ended, actually. So 45, 55, 65. So he's been in for almost 4 decades, right? So he's not impressed by Raquel either, because for various reasons, but he's close to her because he likes her and he sees how she's treated, and he always feels sorry for the underdog, even though she thought she was the queen bee. So they're talking and they're trying to figure out how they're going to do their next movie in Spain, which was called The Beloved. So they're talking, and Raquel is saying, I want to take my kids with me because I'm going to be gone for a long, long time. We're going to be in Spain, and then we're heading down to Greece and then heading up to Spain. So she said, but I can't deal with the kids. They're young. I think Tani must have been 10 or 11, and Damon must have been 12 or 13. They were prepubescent, but they were very schooled in life because of being in that industry and just what goes on, all that garbage. Thank God for my mom who kept me away. But anyway, so they're talking about this, and she said, and I've got to find an assistant, but I can't just find any assistant. I've got to find somebody who gets along with the kids, who can make sure their education goes, who can help me, blah, 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 whatever it is. And my dad says, well, I was estranged from my parents for a while because of Vietnam and civil rights, and they didn't understand it. And I was very naughty and mouthy and lippy and thought I knew it all, and 18 and 19. So that tells you all you need to know. And I wasn't raised in a good Persian family where you wouldn't be allowed to talk that way unless it was funny. And I wasn't very funny then. I was very serious. So he's saying, but my daughter, she doesn't impress much unless you're doing something good for somebody else. So she's not going to be impressed by you, and I hope that doesn't bother you. But she knows the industry. She used to go be my assistant when I was making things. She knows a lot of people, the grips. She makes friends with people. She'll keep you away from anybody, that you need to be kept away from, so it doesn't upset your schedule or how you perform. But I don't know how she'd receive it. And don't tell her I said to ask you, just said you were referred to me. That was funny, because I found out later from Raquel, your dad told me, don't tell him that I referred you. So anyway, I get at the hospital a few days later. Oh, and then she tells my dad, she said, oh, that sounds all nice, but my kids fell in love with this woman at the hospital. And she's somebody who told me to get the hell out, get out of the treatment room when I walked in unannounced and, without having been let in. And I haven't been treated like a regular person for quite some time. And when I came back to the waiting room, the only thing I could think of saying to everybody when they said, how's he doing? I said, God, for the first time in years, I was treated like a regular person. I was actually asked to get out of the room. I don't know what to tell you. Everybody laughed. And then I found out from them, they wish they could have told her that years earlier. But anyway, so they didn't realize that they were talking about the same person. So a few days later, Raquel shows up again, and I get this little note from one of the nurses at the station. Miss Welch would like to come in. Is it okay? And me being a jerk, and I'm ashamed to say this, but I'm going to be honest because I hadn't learned how to behave properly when I was irritated. I send a little note back saying, can you wait a half an hour? And she could have come in then, but I did that. What a naughty thing to do. But anyway, I did it because I wanted to establish with her. And I still don't know who no, actually, that's not true because I was explained to who she was. And then I had actually saw her in that movie, 2000 Leagues Under the Sea or whatever, but I didn't remember it. And she certainly didn't look the same way that she did in that movie. So she comes into the room a half hour later and she sees my name, Vesta Clinton. And she says, you're Vesta Clinton? And I said, yeah. And she said, oh. She said, Clinton. Why would I know that name? And I said, well, I understand you're an actress. And I said, my dad's been in the industry for years, but I don't know how you know him. And she said, are you aware that I'm making a movie with him? And I said, no, but bless you. And she said, well, I wasn't going to say this, but your dad has recommended me to ask you if you'd come be my assistant and make sure my kids get their tutoring and stuff. And you'd be living in Greece for a while on the island of Cyprus for months while I film. And then we'd go up to Spain and live on the Costa del Sol for a while after passing through London for a while because I've got to get some production work done. So here I have this great opportunity, right? But I'm also aware that thousands and thousands and thousands of dollars were spent on my education by this hospital, and I signed a contract that I'd stay with them for, I don't know, either 2, 3, or 5 years or whatever in the ICU, that they were willing to spend that money and educate me because they needed somebody for all the follow-up care. And I had to have all that education in order to treat, to be a surgical tech and then do the follow-up care and train the other nurses, which was a horrific experience. So anyway, so I said, gee, I'm so sorry. Thank you for the offer, but I can't do it. Are you serious? She said to me. And I said, yes. And she said, how old are you? And I said, 19. She said, nobody offered me this at 19. And I said, well, probably. And this is how gutsy I was. I said, probably nobody offered to spend thousands of dollars to educate you either. And she started laughing. And she said, aren't you a mouthy little thing? And I said, well, if you know my dad, you shouldn't. What's that question about? I said, I'm sure he's told you. And she said, no, he just said you were a strong woman. You had very strong opinions, but you were kind and a good soul, and that we would figure out how to work this out. And I said, oh, tell my dad thank you, but I wish he'd call me and tell me that personally. That's how damaged my relationship with my parents was. And this instance in a treatment room at St. Joseph's in Burbank with the woman whose brother would tell me about Meherabad was pivotal in my life. And you want to know why? Raquel was smart enough to know that she had met her match and she wasn't going to get any grief from me if she didn't give me any, what's the word I just used? Grief. Grief. Okay. So thank you, Rosalie. Oh yeah, Rosalie, you're awesome to keep me on track. So I love you. You did it wonderfully at Meherabad. Rosalie's one of my favorite people in all the universes, just in case you're wondering why I love her so much. She's just a Baba savant is what I look at her. All heart, pure joy. Anyway, so because what Raquel did is she didn't go back to the room because she told everybody she was going to ask if I wanted to join the team. She went up to the nurse, the hospital, charge nurses at the station. Is Meta on? Is Meta on?
I mean,
Okay, I got it. I found the word. It's called the head nurse of the hospital, the head nurse. And I'll never forget this woman's name because she was chosen by Baba to make a pivotal decision on whether or not I would go with Raquel or not go, because I had already made my decision. And this woman was just about to take it out of my hands and drop it right in Meherabad's so he could drop some more magic and mystical dust on me. But I'm sure my sweet little darling Rosalie encouraged him to do at that moment. Somehow she found a way to say, get Vesta to India. I know that because that's when we first met, was on the bus with my parents. But anyway, so she walks into the nurse's office and they recognize her immediately. So she gets a free pass. So she walks into Mrs. Averman. Don't forget that name. It's a name that's been blessed by whatever, many, hopefully at least one incarnation afterward in his love. But anyway, Raquel says, hi, I want to talk to you about Vesta. Now, I'm kind of, what would you call? I'm very, very respected by the administration for what I was able to do so they could start open heart surgeries, because they had to prep before they started it. So Raquel says to Mrs. Averman, I'm making films in Greece on the island of Cyprus and in Spain on the coast of the Sol. I'll be gone for quite a while. I've got to be in London and England for quite a while on production work. And I've asked Vesta to be my assistant and take care of the tutoring for my children. And I've worked on my last picture with her father. And I've asked her to come with me, but she told me no. And Mrs. Averman said, what? And she said, yeah, she told me no. And Mrs. Averman said, repeat to me. So they evidently have this conversation. And Raquel tells her about living and this and that and blah, 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 and that I told her no. And what I find out from Mrs. Averman later, when I went back and thanked her a couple of years later, is that she realized that I was a special person, that I would have honored the contract and passed up an opportunity of a lifetime. She somehow respected that from a 19-year-old who she knew was a hippie on the weekends and after 3 o'clock at night, or whenever she left the hospital. She probably just assumed that I probably was smoking marijuana, which would have been right. So she knew all those things about me. And yet she came up to that ICU, walked straight into the treatment room, stood tall with a rod in her spine and said, what kind of an idiot and fool are you, Miss Clinton? Nurse Clinton, because that's what we called each other. Like first names were forbidden because we weren't people, we were nurses. So anyway, I looked at her and I said, excuse me? And she said, what kind of an idiot and fool are you? And I said, I want to apologize ahead of time, but what did I do so I can correct it, please? And she said, how many people would walk away from an opportunity like you just had? And I said, no one, that's why I'm here. I said, I eventually would like to consider the possibility, if I can afford it and have the time or whatever, of becoming a doctor. So I want to learn as much as I can as a nurse, because doctors are nothing without nurses, and nurses are nothing without nurses' aides. So I've already been a nurse's aide when I was a student. So I know what that's like. I know what it's like to be a nurse. I'll be a better doctor if I know what intensive nursing is about, because I'll never be able to ask a nurse to do something I myself wouldn't do or don't know how to do or understand the difficulty or whatever. So she says, I'm not talking about nursing or medicine. I'm talking about living on the, and she actually F-bombed me. I'm talking about living on the F-bomb island of Cyprus in Greece, living on the Costa del Sol in Spain, and spending time in London where all those great museums are that my husband and I visit every other year. So Baba even gave her a connection to where I was going, which even pushed her more to support me. So she said, what I'm going to do, because I don't want you around anymore, because now I'm wondering about your judgment that you would pass up such opportunity, which I find fascinating now, but I was horrified when she said it at the time. She said, I'm going to write a resignation letter for you to sign, and I'm going to backdate it. And I'm not going to backdate it just 2 weeks. I'm going to backdate it 4 weeks, and I'm tearing up your contract so no one can ever pull it out of your HR file and say, something funny went on here. There was a drunk monkey in HR at this time. Contract, so nobody could say she broke her contract. She's not worth her word. Let's not hire her. They would see this resignation letter that was more flowery than I would have ever put my name to. And I signed it. And she said, now, and let's see, I can't remember if she had it at the time and marched up with it or said, wait here until I come back. And that doesn't matter. It's immaterial. But when she came up with this resignation letter for me to sign, she said, after you sign it, go in there and just give it to her and tell her thank you for the opportunity. And thank you so much for talking with Mrs. Averman. And that told me how Mrs. Averman wanted Raquel to remember her name, which I thought was so funny that these people are impressed by an actress and not by the nurses in the station. But anyway, that's another story. So anyway, I ended up working with Raquel. Her brother's name was Jimmy Tejada, who was married to Leslie Tejada, who most of you who are early Baba lovers know. Anyway, he comes in this old 61 or 2 VW bus. And it's not a pop top. It's just this green and kind of grayish VW bus that he lived in Mexico when he worked in an orphanage and volunteered down there helping with children who had lost their parents. So he was cleaning his van one day when I was taking out the trash. And I walked over and I said, oh my God, is this, because this is like his first or second day there. And I haven't really talked with him because I was busy doing stuff. So I see him cleaning out all the stuff that was in the van from the drive up from Mexico. And I pop my head in and I say, hey, Jimmy, how are you doing today? He said, fine, Jay Baba. I said, Jay Baba? And I kind of passed along. But then I said, you want some help? He said, yeah, put this bag in, what you're taking out, or maybe bring the barrel over here. That'll save me from having to walk over. I remember this conversation. So then I saw some things, up on the dashboard. You know how the VWs snub right to the gas pedal and everything. So it was really easy for me to see what's up there. And all of a sudden I look over at the image of, sorry, here's my neighbor with my dinner. Give me 1 minute. Hola, Gloria, ¿cómo estás? Estoy explicando una cosa como yo paso por Dios y Dios es en mi vida. So, estoy por un Zoom ahorita. Bueno, so, ya necesito una cosa para mí.
We need subtitles.
Oh, yo pienso que tengo un medio sándwich, pero si hay lentas o no. Mañana, está bien. Pero si lo que quiere, lo que tiene tiempo para hacer, lo que necesita.
This
Pero
wonderful
si hay
neighbor, she's
de leche
taking
que
care
pueda
of
dar.
Vesta. This wonderful lady is taking care of Vesta. She brings her.
Si tiene una media sándwich y tengo popcorn y necesito leche allá, no cayó en mi cama, pero un vaso grande de plástico. No cayó, pero si puede poner uno aquí. Bueno, gracias. No, está bien. No está bien. No, pizza mañana está bien por la. Bueno, y tengo una noche, gracias por su ayuda. Y ¿cuántos amigos tengo ahorita? Hay 43 amigos por ese Zoom. Y ellos están diciendo buenas noches, gracias por su ayuda con Vesta. Bueno, tengo una noche, te quiero mucho. Okay, sorry that I have to. She's so sweet. She brings me breakfast, lunch. She cleans my house. She does everything. Anyway, so
Vesta,
these are Baba's
yeah.
angels everywhere.
Vesta, you need to hit your video again.
Oh,
Yeah, there we are. Yay.
all right. So anyway, where was I?
You were in the van,
You met
looking in the
Jimmy.
van.
So I'm in the van, and I look over, and there's one of those little cards with Baba sitting in the lotus position with his hand up like this. And it's probably he's early 70s. It's probably mid 60s. You know that picture.
Yeah.
So I don't recognize the face. I recognize Baba's face in the 20s, 30s, and 40s. That's kind of the time where I see Baba's image in my head before I see his images after the new life. So anyway, so I said to him, well, who's this? And he said, that's Avatar Meher Baba. Boom, my head explodes because I recognize the name.
Mhm.
But I don't put it with a picture. I just think, where have I heard that name before? And it's just a passing thought, and it goes away. But Jimmy and his wife, Leslie, and I developed a relationship that went on for years. And here's what happened. After Jimmy says Mayor Baba's name, I said, Mayor Baba, I said, I've heard that name before. He says, yeah, probably. But I hadn't at that time. I mean, unless it's so unconscious, I just can't remember it. So anyway, I hear this name and I recognize it. And I said, well, who was he that I would recognize his name? And he starts to explain the life of Baba to me. And I still don't relate to it, but it's so beautiful, living in Pune. And he tells me that when he was a child, evidently there was a herd of water buffalo, that one of the buffaloes either stood by him or stood over him to protect him from the stampede, and how his father was so much older. And he tells me about how he gets married to Shireen when she's like, or engaged to Shireen when he's an older man and she's only 5. He just goes on and on about this life and the mastery and servitude. And he must have talked to me, because what happened was I sat down in the driver's seat with my hands on the steering wheel, and he was in the back, and he sat on one of the back seats. And we just chatted for at least 45 minutes to an hour about this. When he was done, I got down, and that was it. So a couple of years later, or whenever it was, when my time with Raquel ended, I asked Jimmy and Leslie if I could come stay with them, because I wanted to get out of LA and I wanted to get out of Hollywood and I wanted to get away from all the people I had to deal with. And 100 miles was significant in those days. And so I called up Jimmy and Leslie and said, can I come live with you for a while until I find a place in Santa Barbara and get hired? And Jimmy says to me, I'm hiring, but not in medical profession. I do crafts, but come stay with us. And I said, well, how much? I'd like to pay you. How much can I pay you? And they said, nothing. We'd like to hire you, and you can make it up on days when there's no work. Just help Leslie around the house and with the kids and give her a break, because she's struggling with health issues. She had low blood sugar at the time and everything. So I ended up packing whatever I wanted, tossing the rest of my stuff to Goodwill and to whoever wanted it, packing my car and heading myself up to Santa Barbara on Mountain Drive, East Mountain Drive, overlooking Santa Barbara, straight out to the Channel Islands, on the most beautiful guest cottage at the end of an estate in Upper Montecito. So I pull in, they come out, and 2 little kids run out. And I'll be danged, I don't walk in the door, and directly across from the door entrance is the I am the ancient one. That poster. And I almost dropped to my knees. I was so overcome and so overwhelmed that I burst out sobbing, because that was the exact form that used to come sit on my. I was a little girl, and stroke me and unbraid my plait and dry my hair for me and rub me and tell me how much he loved me, and told me, please don't grieve over your aunt. She's with me. All I did was just change her jacket and her coat and her clothes, which had worn out, and I'm giving her body a rest. She struggled and suffered so much. So let me give her a rest, and I'll return her in new clothes to you. So that was the first time I realized that not only was my childhood blessed with a knowledge that very few people understood or know, including me today, and I have the experience, but I don't try to understand things. I just try to accept it and know that it's his gift, and to honor any gift, whether it's suffering or ecstasy or whatever. Doesn't matter. Everything comes from him, like he said. flows through us, probably tons and tons of people and millions of things that are unseen and unknown, gets washed clean, a lot of it, and goes back to him. So all of a sudden I realized how my entire childhood, my first breath, was taken for that moment of seeing God's face and accepting it immediately without any question, because I'd already accepted it as Jesus. And I'd learned from Jimmy a while back when he was explaining Baba about the progression of avatars coming every 700 to 14 years. 14, oh God, wouldn't you love it to be 14 years? Oh, that'd be too many avatars to deal with. Oh my God, every 1400 years is enough, please, thank you. No, it's not enough. Bob, I'm making a joke, it's a bad joke. That's the naughty child. Pay attention to the sweet girl, okay? Anyway, so I realized I'm seeing God's face. And the first words out of me is not, it's God's face. It was, like the gross world question of a 23-year-old. Wait a minute. How could that be God's face? There weren't cameras 2,000 years ago. And Jimmy said, why do you, because now they're curious. Why do you think that's God's face? You already saw God's face. I said, I did. And he said, don't you remember my van when you looked at Baba and said, who was that? And I told you. And I said, that's the same man? He said, yeah, but that picture was probably taken in the late 20s, late 20s. Something like that, he said. So now I'm blown away, and that's it. And I said, where is he? And he said, remember I told you when you were asking that he had I either heard about Baba the day before or the day after or the day of his passing, because Jimmy told me that he had just passed. It was probably the day after, because I don't think Jimmy would have known Baba was passing, because the Mandali didn't. So it was probably after Baba passed that I heard about him. So I didn't know about Baba when Baba was physically present, but I had an inkling and a sense of him, early in childhood. So anyway, the first thing I said was, well, what happened to him? And they said, he'd passed away or whatever, or he dropped his form and now he was merged in everything and blah, blah, blah. So I said, so what about those people that you told me about? He said, well, they're in India. And immediately the thought was, you've got to get yourself over there. So within months I was in India, but fortunately, because it was a few days after a Baba meeting where the person giving the meeting said that if you say the Parvati God prayer, you're protected. And if you say Baba's name while you're going through, whether it's good, bad, different, or an ugly experience, if you say Baba's name.
You're muted. You're muted. You were muted.
I am?
No, she's not
Not
muted.
now.
No, she's fine.
Okay. So I'm newer to Baba meetings. I'm not new to looking at things spiritually, so I'm able to glom onto things without too much question or doubt. And I know that what I'm hearing are Baba's words, and if I really believe that I saw the face of God and Jesus is the same as Meherabad, then whatever I'm hearing that Baba said has to be absolutely true. So when he tells me the prayer in his name is a protection, a few days later, I happened to be hitchhiking into LA because my young brother, who I was putting through college, his car broke down and he had some midterm exams or something that he couldn't miss. So I gave him my car to use, and I thought, okay, I'm hitchhiking to LA. I can go down the 101, get off my ramp, and call my friend. Unfortunately, I get into a car of a very bad man. And if any of you have struggled with abuse and in issues as an adult, plug your ears, because this is important to the story, but it doesn't matter whether you hear it or not. So I'm going to give you 5 seconds to plug your ears if you easily trigger over any abuse issues. And I love you and know that Baba's going to help because he helped me. And remind yourselves, we're all one soul. So if he helped me, he helped you. You just have to take it out of your left hand and stop throwing it into your right hand and giving it back to yourself. You've got to throw it up to him, because I learned that lesson about a month ago. So here I am hitchhiking, and I get into the wrong car. Very bad man drives me up to Ojai, just below Meherabad, and I get assaulted, knifed, burned, and left for dead on the road. I get rolled down a hillside into an orange orchard. How Baba had me crawl out of that up to the road and get down to the highway, I have no recollection. None whatsoever. All I know is I ended up down on the freeway. And eventually a car filled with 3 men, an old man and his 2 sons, stopped by and put me in their car. And I don't resist, because either I was unable or Baba didn't want me to, but I couldn't resist. I was in such a state. And somehow they get a name and a phone number. Hello?
You're okay.
Okay, I'm okay. So somehow they get a name and a phone number out of me, and they call that name and number from a phone booth when we had phone booths all over. So Sandy and her husband Harry pick me up, take me to their house. They clean me up, they console me, and they put me to bed. So this was November 23rd, 1974. And on November 21st, I board a plane that my dad puts me on, who's begging me not to go, that he'll pay whatever transfer fee for my ticket. And they wanted me to stay until I was okay, because I was a wreck. But I was bound and determined to go meet those people who served my God. But I had also hacked the plan, and this is something that very few people know, because I don't want people, doesn't matter what I didn't want. But anyway, I had decided that people didn't know that I was going to India to meet my sweet, beautiful, wonderful friend Marianne Barnhart, who is struggling with stage 4 cancer right now, ovarian cancer, and at the end stages. And she and her sister Laura, who I call Susie, are part of my friendship 50 years ago, back with Jimmy and Leslie and Martha Flores and Randy Buck and Tim Barnhart, Laura Barnhart, Susie Greathead. Let's see, I'm probably leaving out people, but those, Irene Ives, all those people, Maureen Lehman, her husband Bobby, all those people are some of the most beautiful souls. Oh, Donna Lynn Karpelis, came a few years later when she left living in Greece. But all those people, why am I saying this? Help. Why did I go here?
I don't know, but just you're on your way to India.
I'm on my way to India.
It's a lovely part of the story, and they're all the people that you love and were part of this story. But now you're on your way to India, love.
What year is this?
Thank you, Rainey. That's another reason why I asked you to help.
What year is this?
I'm on my way to Calcutta, because Laura and her sister Marianne are especially Laura, Marianne, because she dedicated her life to children and Montessori principles. They're in Calcutta teaching women the Montessori method of their children in a manner that they can teach other women to do the same thing. And they can bring so many Indian children in Calcutta into the Montessori teaching method, which opens the imagination and gives the children identified boundaries about behavior that'll help them move through society with the least amount of problems and the best ability to problem solve. If any of you know Montessori, I'm probably bastardizing it, but you get the idea. It's all for children to have a better childhood thought process, understanding of conflict resolution, etc. So I can't remember if they knew a date I was coming, or even if they knew I was coming, and I can ask Marianne this, but right now I'm thinking they didn't, when I realized what happened when they opened the little there was like an 8-inch square peephole that you would open from the inside of the house and look and see who was at your door, because they lived behind a Brahmin complex and they weren't Brahmins. So it was difficult for them at times because their habits were different than the Brahmins. But when the door opened, you looked across a wide roadway into a very big open field. I mean, it looked like it could have been 3 soccer fields put together, but it was an open field. And so there were a lot of, miscreants and mendicants and people that, would put up a hut and travel. Some of the gypsies would pass through. So anyway, that's the area where their door opened up to. So I'm knocking on the door, and Marianne comes and she opens up this peephole. And as she opens up, she sees my face. She looks at it for about 3-4 seconds and slams that little thing shut. And about 3-4 seconds pass, and she opens it, and I hear under her breath, "She's still there." Did you hear me? She's still there. She's still there, is what oh, Anthony and Cher. Hi. All right, Cher. What happened to your curly hair? You're still beautiful. You're still beautiful, and you're still with that Greek god. Good for you. Good decision. Anyway, so she closes it again, and I hear her tell Laura, her sister, who's with her, we're in worse off shape than I thought, Laura. I just saw Vesta standing out our door. And all of a sudden I start knocking again, and she opens the door and she says, "Oh my God," they were just shocked. And I said, "Come in, come in, come in." So that was my landing in Calcutta. And you want to know how I got to their house? I had no idea where they were living. I didn't have an address. But I knew that there were 2 women in Calcutta, which was like millions of people, right? 2 women teaching Montessori. And I had read up a little bit about India before. And I don't know why. I thought that I'd find somebody who knew who Laura and Marianne were. So I arrived at the airport, and Calcutta in those days, there was no Indira Gandhi. It was horrific. If the airport was built for 10,000 people, there were 30,000 people inside, easily 3-to-1. It was chaos, as most of us know that arrived in those early 70s. And because there was no Indira Gandhi, no 20-point plan to put things together, if you wanted something done, you better have some rupees in your pocket. Well, I didn't really know this, and I had this big suitcase. So all I thought was I have to go get a taxi. So I walk out, and in those days there were bumblebees, but they had just kind of come online. Everything was pretty much taxi at that time. That's just my recollection. I could be off. So anyway, I walk down and I'm looking for a taxi. And I know to look in these men's faces and eyes, because I'm by myself and I'm dedicating my life from now on to never putting myself in a vulnerable position. So I must have passed a couple dozen taxis, because I put my head in the window, looked, and just kept walking if I didn't like it. And by Baba's grace, I come across a taxi, and the driver jumps out and he says, Madam, Meherabad, I've come to take you wherever you want. Please hand me your saman pasara and let me put it in. You jump in quickly and I will take you where you go. And we will stop for tea first. I will bring you tea. Because I had already told him, he had already asked me if I'd been to India before. I said no. He said, you must have a cup of Indian tea from this street when you first come to India. And by now I'm thinking, oops, dysentery. And he smiles at me. He said, don't worry. And I didn't say it. He said, and don't worry. I know you worry about your bowels when you come here. Don't worry about your bowels. I have a very good chaiwala that I will take you to. So I figure this old man is so sweet So I get in the back seat. And so he says, where are you going? And I said, I don't know. He said, you need a hotel. He was asking me all these questions. I said, I don't know. I said, here's what I'm looking for. I'm looking for two sisters who live in Calcutta who are teaching Montessori method schooling to other women so they can become teachers and teach the Montessori school method to little Indian children. And he says, oh, madam, I know exactly where to take you. So I'm believing him and I'm trusting him. So all of a sudden it hits me, you better start saying the prayers in Baba's name. So I hadn't memorized the prayer at this time. So I pull out my card and I'm reading it and then I'm saying Baba's name. And lo and behold, he takes me up to this place where I knock on the door and find Laura and Marianne. Do you know who he was? He was their taxiwala. He would pick them up and take them to where they were teaching these other women. Figure that one out for me and tell me when you do. How does that happen? How do I go by all those taxis? But how does the taxi I choose be the personal taxi of the people I want to see in a city of millions of people who I don't know where they live? Figure that one out. Rosalie, magic dust. So anyway, they do not know that I have come to India to take the train with them across India and see the sights, to stay with them and see Calcutta for a while before we head down. But I'm not really paying attention to the fact that Mehera's birthday is coming up. This must have been a few days before Mehera's birthday. No, before Amartiti. I'm sorry. Wait. I'm so confused. I don't know if we went for Mehera's birthday or went for Amartiti, but there was one of those two dates of why we went. It probably was Amartiti because I traveled around Calcutta and worked with Saint Teresa, not Saint Teresa. Who's that woman?
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa.
Mother Teresa. Excuse me, somebody write down my dream where Baba brought Saint Teresa of Avila to me, because that's why that came up. And Gustaji and then Mayor Baba in that experience I had. Will somebody write that down and remind me? Because Jeff, I think that would be a good talk for people to hear this whole thing when Baba showed me the difference between, told me, the message was, because I was begging for mercy, that I can't give you mercy until you understand that agony and mercy are great teachers, and until you balance those, I can't give you mercy. And that's where I learned the expression, because he told me, he said, you take my mercy in your left hand and you accept it, but then you throw it into your other hand and don't give what I give you back to me so I can bless it and send it back to you. And until you understand that, you cannot accept my mercy. So that was a good lesson, but it's a beautiful thing that happened to learn that. So somebody want to remind Jeff about that. Maybe when you have time or anybody's interested, I could tell that experience because it's incredible. And many of you on this have heard it already. So anyway, so remind me of that. So anyway, they didn't know that I had gone to India to visit them, tool around, cross India, go to Amartiti. So I missed Mehera's birthday that year because that's the first time I met the Mandali was at Amartiti. Sorry, see, this is a chemo brain.
Oh.
Anyway, so we're getting on the train and they don't know that I had gone to India to commit suicide because I didn't want to live anymore. I'd struggled with a childhood like Zoe, but the only difference was that my parents intervened when they found out. Poor Zoe was left on her own. Thank God she found Baba and Jamie. Oh, and what a life of inspiration. Anyway, I'll never forget Zoe because I remember when I first met her, we had a conversation and we talked about our childhood. Somehow we knew we could recognize each other, had an experience, including shock therapy. Anyway, Zoe became an inspiration for me. And she and Jamie, when they found out I was struggling with a health issue, immediately sent me music and all kinds of stuff. But anyway, so and then I had gone, and what I was going to do is go back to Calcutta with them, and then take a train up to the Himalayas and find a cliff and throw myself into the abyss, because I was being a darshan, and I was positive in my foolish thinking that Baba would forgive me, because of course he knew what I went through, and what was there to live for. So we take this train across India. We land in Ahmednagar and go to Amartisi. And having been a nurse in the medical field, when somebody passed out, I'd rush to them immediately, blah, 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 get them up, put them over in the shade, give them water, get some help, find out who they were with, and then just go on about my business. And since I didn't know who the men were, I didn't know who to tell this had happened. So I just took care of them, made sure they were all right, and then just went on. And then if somebody else passed out or needed help, I'd go help. So evidently this caught the eye of Mani and I think Katie. And so they told Goher that there's this woman who, when she sees people, she's not asking for a doctor or whatever, she's taking care of them, and, you know, blah, blah, blah. And we think you should meet her. Maybe she could help relieve you, and you could work out something so that you could be here during Amartisi and have a helpmate. And she may have had other helpmates. I have no idea. I'm only telling you what I know. So somebody found me, and they brought me over, and they introduced me to Mehera and Goher, and that was it. Once Goher took my hands in those hands, Mehera, I mean, how many of you, you'll never forget Goher touching your hands. It was like putting your hands in a silk purse that was lined with the thickest velvet and filled with magic dust and love and everything divine that you could imagine. I mean, oh my God, once those hands touched you. And I remember thinking, wow, these are hands of an actual human being. They have to be divine. I mean, my head kind of went there. And then Mehera embraced me, and then she pulls me away, and she takes both my hands in her hand. And she says to me, "Are you a doctor?" I said, "Oh, no. I said, because I'm still, you know, kind of trying to, you know, be secretive. I said, but maybe one day. And she said, well, we understand that you've been helping people who fainted or got too much sun or whatever. And I said, oh yeah. I said, I'm a nurse. And I said, and I saw somebody fall down or whatever it was. So she said, well, Meherazad's going to be open in a few days. Why don't you come out and let Goher show you Dr. She's a doctor. She was Baba's doctor. And I went, oh, no wonder. So she let her show you the clinic, and maybe you can come out and help her on clinic days. So I thought, oh, okay. And I think I said, okay, as if I knew that even if I didn't go back to Calcutta, I was going to stay. And I hadn't been asked to stay, but I was willing to wait on committing suicide until I saw Baba's home. So by Baba's grace, I still had curiosity enough to make me drop a thought of suicide, which I was totally committed to. And that, again, is only his grace. And the only reason I keep reminding myself how his grace is because his grace is everywhere, right? We just don't see it, can't see it, or choose not to see it, or miss the cues on where to look. It's always there. So I ended up a few days later going out to Meherazad, and that was it. I started working with Goher. And I thought, oh, okay, summer's coming up. They send everybody away. I'll go to the Himalayas then. But by now, I'm experiencing, like we did, and we do, and forevermore now, without fail, the ability to access and be immersed in unconditional love. And not just any kind of unconditional love like your parents deal with you getting arrested for pot or civil unrest or trespassing on public property in the late 60s. It's nothing like that where your parents stand by you. See, I went off the rails. Rosalie, somebody help.
Unconditional love you're talking about.
Oh, unconditional love. So it's not the unconditional love you get from a family, your parents or whatever. It's unconditional love that's divine, that comes from the source. And it's slightly different but you never forget that feeling. And all I could think of was, this was just so incredible. And I learned later on in life, especially these last 6 months, being on my left side in my bed and being unable to walk, is that there comes a time when your appetite for unconditional love is so strong and you thirst and hunger so much that all you want to do is, even though you think your plate is empty and you have nothing to give, is you want to share unconditional love, of which you may not know anything about, but you know if it's shared, it's doubled and tripled and exponentially. See, look at my arms. You shouldn't be seeing this crap, this stuff. I'm so sorry. Ay, ay, ay.
No problem. We'll take you as you are.
Oh, where'd you learn that? But anyway, so I'm experiencing this, but I later learned that, when it's shared, how incredible it is. So I ended up at summertime. Mehera wanted, no, Martha Flores was there. And I think that summer we went down to Kerala because we were told not to go to Goa because that's where all the hippies and drugs and sex live. So Martha and I go down to Kerala. And while in Kerala, Martha wasn't swimming this day. And we had literally just gone in, waist deep for several days because we were staying at a guest house right on the beach. So we'd walk down and spend our day at the beach. And all the villagers down at this village where we were staying would come line the beach up at the palm tree line above the sand, and they just watched us. No one ever came down. No one ever said a thing. So this day I'm out swimming, and the water seems to be at a higher level. So being a swimmer and growing up with a pool, I'm swimming around out in this water, and all of a sudden this shark fin shows up about 20 feet from me. And I look at the shark fin and I think, oh, it's a dolphin.
Yeah.
So I continue swimming, and then another fin comes up. And another fin comes up. And there's a circle of fins about 30, 40 feet away from me. And I look to shore, and there's Marta, hysterical, waving her arms. Come in, come in. So all of a sudden I realize, ooh, I'm in deep doo-doo. So I start screaming Baba's name and swimming to shore. And by Baba's grace, I make it. And we look just as I think March is on this. You can correct me during the question and answer period, but that's my recollection. And it doesn't matter whether I'm totally accurate or not, but I was surrounded by shark and Baba safe.
Yeah.
So we go back to Nagar. My sweet friend Martha, who was part of the group who brought me to Baba, who I will have my head at her feet in gratitude for a long time as the others. We walk back to the bungalow and recover, and then just go back to Nagar. She goes back to the States, and I end up staying because I thought, oh, well, I came back and Mehera sent us on this trip, told us to go down here. They all told us what to avoid. We got to experience South India and their delicious food, and that was it. And then I think it was that summer that Goher got very, very ill. And am I still in the story of how I came to Baba, or did I skip into something that's
No, you're
off topic?
you're at Meherazad, and if you can remember some of the stories with Mehera and
Okay.
yeah.
I was just going there, which is kind of interesting that you said that, because that first summer, I don't know how it happened. I don't have that memory, and it doesn't matter. But Goher threw her back out where she could barely move.
Oh.
And so I believe my four-point learning as a nurse, where you would take when somebody couldn't walk, like when they had an accident and you need to transport them and there's nothing to transport them with. If you can find a blanket or a jacket and use a 4-point restraint and lift them up and carry them elsewhere. I just remember carrying Goher to bed while she was just like groaning and in excruciating pain. And I'd even given her morphine, and that barely touched it by the time we got her to the bed.
Uh,
So she's in bed, and the first thing out of Mehera's mouth, because now Mani and Meru and Rano and Arnavas are there, the first thing out of Mehera's mouth was, she turned to me and she said, Vesta, you can't leave today. You've got to stay and take care of Goher during the night, because she's going to need help during the night. We'll help her during the day. You go sleep right now and rest, and you stay at night. I'll have them prepare a bed for you, a mattress on the carpet in the sitting room, and we'll, I did not have a mosquito net. She said, I don't think I was asked. I just remember I did not have a mosquito net. So anyway, I go down, and Arnavas has me lay in her bed. And they closed all the doors, and they said, we're going to try and keep it as quiet as possible. You may not sleep, but at least rest. So I spent the day down in Arnavas's bed and just was really quiet. And that night, after arti, I did whatever I did over in the dispensary, and about 9 o'clock was the time when everybody turned in, because everybody would get up, between 5 and 6, get tea ready for arti, and then, breakfast at 7, and then the day would start. So around 9 o'clock was bedtime. Either the sitting room was always empty by 9, and bedtime was then. So people went to their rooms, and they either continued reading or went to sleep, or whatever they did. So I laid down on the mattress, and I'm going to have to pull. You caught me off guard. I wasn't prepared for this. What time is it? Oh, I've only been talking 24 minutes.
No, it's it's 11:30 here.
So do we want to stop here
No,
and then open up for your interview?
No, tell a little bit more, and then we'll have a part 2. But give us a little of the flavor of being there at Meherazad with Mehera and Mani and Goher and all that. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna have to open up that story and just have it so I don't miss anything, because it's so exquisite. In the moment.
And we'll
Okay.
then we can you can
Well, now you're to take care of Goher at night and rest in the day. Mehera has requested you to stay, not go.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
Well, that's
Here
a
it
good
is.
start. That's a good opener for some.
Okay. Well, this is where it's leading to. This is what I wrote called "In the Moment She Was in His Company," and this took me days and probably 25 hours to write. So because I devoted so much time to this, I want to explain to you the reason why. I don't want you to think of me in this as you're listening to it. I want you to put yourself in the position of being that naughty girl, but a sweet child, who out of pure good fortune was offered this opportunity. But reminding ourselves that we're one soul with only minds that separate us. Each of you had to have been there at the same time. You were unaware of it. But it was important to me to try and write this with as much emotion, innocence, ignorance, and absolute pure awe of what I was witnessing, in a manner that emotionally you could attach yourself to it and experience at least pieces of it, if not all of it, the way I did as a 24-year-old. I hadn't even turned 25. I didn't turn 25 until I was September 18th of that year. And I was extremely broken. I was so broken that I was suicidal. But Baba saved my butt. So anyway, this is what I wrote. And it's fairly short. And I think it's apropos when you hear how I first start out, because of just losing some of the stalwarts in our Baba family recently. And for me, the loss of Zoe was huge, like to many of you. And I just pray that Jamie's going to be embraced by everybody and is going to be able to walk through this with as much love and devotion and kindness and compassion as I have the last 6 months. Because I don't know if I could be Jamie right now, his devotion to his beloved and his Zoe, but that's a whole different thing. And that memorial was so exquisite. But I think this is apropos for many of us who've lost close ones recently. In the moment she was in his company, there is a physical aspect to loving one who is dear to us. It is part of what makes love so precious to behold. There is no doubt love can be touched. Because our love for each other, I believe, we never lose the ability to touch the special people in our lives, no matter where we are, no matter the physical distance between us. The Mandali, especially Mehera, showed us through their daily life. Sorry, this is my chemo brain. I get so emotional with this, with the love and compassion that's giving in an abundance and so freely. The Mandali, especially Mehera, showed us through their daily lives that one who is loved does not need to be physically present to experience the love between them. Meher Baba himself proved this during the new life. Although physically absent from his lovers during this period of his advent, his presence was palpable, pervasive, and could be felt by those who did not accompany him on that walking journey across India. What a divine gift this is for us all to know. Sorry, I can't sit up. We are not denied his presence, we are not denied his presence, God's presence, even when he is not present in physical form. And by his grace, we can also experience this tender side of love with others and touch them when separated by distance, even in death. I witnessed this newly discovered dimension of love the first time I stayed overnight at Meherazad in mid 1975. I slept on a mat rolled out on the edge of a carpet on the living room floor. My head faced Baba's room and Goher's bed. Goher was not feeling well due to a severe kink in her back that made sitting and walking difficult and painful for her. Mehera suggested I stay at Meherazad to help Goher. She said my sleeping in the living room would allow me to tend to Goher's needs during the night, while providing me a place to rest during the day in Arnavas and Naj's room. It was during these first nights I witnessed the unbreakable bond of love between two people. And I use the word people with Baba because that was, although they all knew Baba was the avatar, they treated him as the man because that's who they served. It was Eric, this isn't in what I'm saying, but I'm reminding all of us and those who never met the Mandali, what they used to tell us about that in those days is that they served the man who was God and tended to his needs and didn't have time to sit around talking about, oh, God did this today, God did that. They never sat around and talked about, oh, did you see Baba's face? Do you like the shape of his nose? Did you count the lashes on it? They just didn't have time for that. They were so busy. So Mehera was still talking to Baba as the man whose body held the divine presence of the Lord, but she related to him as her beloved in the human form. So here's what I watched. I witnessed the unbreakable bond of love between two people. As in a state of awe and in the quietude of my repose, I shyly watched Mehera's nightly routine. And this is an aside. I will never forget that decision I made to close my eyes and at least in my being, give her a sense of privacy or watch something unfold that the mystical dust was being sprinkled. And I'm not saying there was mystical dust. It was just, that's how I relate to it. So, in a state of awe and in the quietude of my repose, I shyly watched Mehera's nightly routine. She was absorbed in love for her beloved Baba, so tender and vulnerable as in its purity. As I gazed up at Mehera from the floor, I came to understand the lover and the beloved are never truly separated. Even if one person is not physically present, it does not mean the other person cannot touch the presence of the loved one who is absent. Before retiring at the end of the day, Mehera would spend private time in Baba's room. When she was done, she would quietly step out and close the door. After sliding her feet back into her slippers, she would then walk around the house and lovingly gaze upon his images and converse with him. Mehera would also sit at the dining table and talk with Baba in the present tense. I always sensed Mehera knew he was sitting to her left at the head of the table when she did this. I felt such warmth and comfort believing Baba was just a few feet away from me as well. I sensed he revealed himself to her in these tender moments of innocent love. It occurred to me, if all is an illusion, why not the illusion of Baba just around the corner from where I slept, instead of the illusion of separation? This is an aside, not in what I wrote. And that was a lesson that got ingrained in me as I watched how the Mandali related to Baba and kept him physically present. I realized that only if it's the mind that separates us, I needed to, and this is what I learned, and I talked at Maris T. I learned to, I think it was Maris T. I'm learning to cradle my mind and my heart. Not that the two need to be joined, because that may be an impossibility, but at least it can be cradled as Jesus was in a manger kind of like setting, but the manger's my heart. And that way, in my head, I can think things jump from the love of my heart and kind of keep my thoughts and my behavior in check, but also keep my beloved present and feel like he's just around the corner, or why not right at my side? And it's just my mind that's not seeing him. And since I don't have divine eyes, I can accept his presence. I can know he's physically present. I don't need to see him to do that. So I gave myself permission for that. So that first night, I watched in reverential wonderment as Mehera circled the inner sanctum of his home, spending the last moments of her day with him. She would fold her hands and bow before his images. She would reach out her hand to touch him, seemingly delighted by the warmth of this contact. And here's what blew me away. I could smell the fragrance of tuberoses and sometimes sandalwood, although sandalwood was rare, and never questioned the fragrance that filled the room. It just seemed so normal. Why wouldn't he send the scent and aroma and that beautiful fragrance of tuberose if Mehera was pouring her heart out to him and loving him as he should be loved? Suddenly, with the grace of a ballerina, she turned and walked over to the living room where I lay. On my stomach on the mat, chin rested on clasped hands, I watched as she stepped out of her slippers, which were literally inches from my face. On my stomach on the mat, leaving her feet by my head. Their deep maroon color of her sandals took on the aura of a Kashmiri queen's regal ruby ring. She walked to the divan where Baba used to sit with the women at the end of the day, her bare feet gliding across the carpet, sounding like peacock feathers rustling as they opened into a magnificent half circle. Out of the corner of my eye, and at this time I dare not turn my head because I don't even want her to be aware of me. Out of the corner of my eye, I saw Mehera bow to the beautifully framed image that hung on the wall above her divan. The pink curtains covering the windows that opened out into the garden shimmered in the moonlight, flickering in the soft golden hues of the lantern burning in the main room. As an aside, just to explain to those of you, like there may be some of you who stayed on this to take care of Arnavas or other Mandali and know this, but in the main house, there would be a little stool about 12 inches off the ground, and they'd place the lantern on it, the kerosene lantern. And that was the only light that we had at that time in the house for nighttime. The pink the lantern burning in the main room. They too were moved by such devotion between lover and beloved. In other words, everything was so quiet because this is midsummer and it's stifling. But as Mehera was moving around and having this beautiful encounter with her beloved, the curtains were moving, the candlelight was flickering. It was as if there was a breeze, but there really was none. It was like everything was alive with Mehera's love with Baba. Okay, tears welled up in my eyes as it struck me that Mehera now accepted that Baba looked at her through a photograph as she must hold her desire to see his living face at bay. It was her surrender to his pleasure that she not become overwhelmed with grief and sadness that touched me deeply. Mehera spoke so tenderly with Baba, telling him he needed his mustache trimmed and that she would tend to it in the morning after breakfast. Other times she told Baba it was time for a head bath, and she would oil his hair and plait it, tying a pink ribbon at the end. Or maybe today I'll pick a blue one, Baba. Baba, tomorrow after your nap and afternoon tea, I will soak your hands and clean under your nails, she continued. Then I'll clip and file them to perfection. Now Mehera saw herself tending to Baba in the present time, experiencing her recollections with renewed intimacy, breathing life into these tender and sweet memories, which we all tend to do anyway. This is an aside, it's not in what I wrote. I mean, I do this with my mother. I do this with Goher and Arnavas all the time. And I do it with a little different, more reverence with Mehera, but I don't think of these people as gone from my life in any aspect, or any of the Mandali, or any of you. It's just, I need to remind myself to prop all of us up together in his love, and remind myself that we have to stop eating our young at times when we criticize openly and publicly each other or are nasty on Facebook. We've got to stop that. That does not please Baba, and it forms camps, which he did not like. Anyway, that's an aside, and I don't mean to lecture, but I am. Chemo, I can blame everything on chemo. Mehera saw her such in the moment, she was truly in his company. I am certain his heartbeat danced in her own heart, as the fairy does on the head of a pin gently, and this brought her comfort. It was caring for the physical needs of his human form Mehera missed so much, the day-to-day needs of the man who was God. However, by reliving and recalling tender moments, she could still touch or see him, and she always seemed to sense the warmth of his humanity, his living flesh. She described to Baba the sweet aroma of his kerchief and the scent of his sadra, both of which she would hold up to her face and breathe in deeply before washing. She recalled how she would soften the leather of his chappals, would repair them during their many walks across India, especially mending them during the new life. She had memorized the shape of Baba's ears and earlobes, the wave and curl of his hair that wound around them both, and the curve of his eyebrows. Mehera could practically recall how many hairs were in each. Remember I made that aside about the Mandali didn't sit around talking about all this stuff, what Baba's face looked like? Who had the ability to stare at Baba? Who has the ability to be that intimate with his physical form as far as tending to those physical body needs, not, getting him in and out of a chair or whatever, but that intimacy. Okay. She told him how after brushing his hair, she would take out a linen cloth and remove the hair from the brush with great care, saving each curl and strand for lovers who would come for darshan. In the moment, she was truly in his company. And his feet, his holy feet. How Mehera so reverentially spoke of soaking Baba's feet in warm, sudsy water, of trimming his toenails and using a soft cloth to dry them. With tenderness in her voice, she would tell him, Baba, darling, I'm going to now gently massage your feet and make certain I dry between each toe. This is her describing to Baba how she would wash his feet. At times, her eyes were closed and her hands would move in the motion she would have used as she engaged in this sacred duty. And I'm reminded of how Mary and the women used to wash the feet and anoint them when Jesus was here. She recalled carefully she would capture the trimmings in a kerchief to keep safe. At times, she told her beloved she was going to make a brooch or use them in picture frames, which she did. If you opened her closet in her room, she had brooches and designs she would make using Baba's toe and fingernails. They were beautifully cleaned and made these incredible mandalas that she would stitch in with little pearls and all kinds of little decorations and little um, when you sew things cross stitch or whatever. I mean, it was some beautiful, beautiful items using things from his body that she collected or saved. She remembered that while living at Meherabad Hill in those early days, she would make backdrops for photographs, brooches, and artistic designs from the nail trimmings. Oh, I just told you that. And those of us who were in that water tower that went in that room, when she would remember Baba in the swing with her, and or was it a hammock? But that picture and all the nails and the pearls and the beautiful gold trimming. Oh, God, that was so gorgeous. She always used satin fabric, beads, pearls, and silk thread. But then, with outstretched hands before her beloved, while actually in her mind's eye holding his feet in her hands, Mehera told Baba how beautifully his ankles were, so thin, so perfectly formed. And her hands were actually moving over his feet. And I could see her fingertips. I couldn't see his left ankle that she was obviously rubbing first because it was on the outside. But I could tell her hands were moving over his ankle at that time. She knew the curve of each toenail. His big toe ran long and gently curved at the edges. She would recall the next toenail, how it lay flat and dipped at the corners, and the next nail curved like a crescent moon. In a whispered voice, she described the smooth texture of the skin on the upper side of both feet, rubbing her hand over each with a gentle caress. In such moments, the master could not resist the love of his servant. No greater power is this. Didn't Baba tell us he's the slave of the love of his lovers? What a beautiful thing. I hold on to that a lot. I'm loving you, Baba. The Lord comes when beckoned by love. I knew Meher Baba had become the slave. Had become the slave of Mehera's love for him in these moments. In these moments, he had chosen her company. Now that's a thought to grasp onto. That's not what I wrote.
Say that again. Say that again, Vesta.
I said, I knew Meher Baba had become the slave of Mehera's love for him in these moments. In these moments, he had chosen her company.
Oh, yeah.
Does that make sense?
Oh, yeah, totally.
Because he could have remained in the Beyond State or wherever he was having a cup of tea and a chapati at that time. But he said, oops, I hear Mehera. I heard the shuffle of her feet.
Yeah.
I know she was touched. I feel her. Oh, man, get over there.
Yeah.
Over the years, whenever I slept in the living room, I waited in eager anticipation to watch this tender display of Mehera's love for Baba. I remembered Baba saying, I will never leave you. This became my mantra as I watched her stand before Baba, speaking to him with such tenderness, love, and affection. Although Mehera's voice was barely above a whisper, I knew it echoed throughout all the universes in every corner of his realm, and his kingdom was being purified, just because Mehera was at his side. Pure love filled the room, bathing it in a rich golden glow from the kerosene lantern, which was placed every night on a stand. Sorry, I'm repeating myself. On a stand in the middle of the room. The Lord's lantern cast its glimmers of flame on the walls of his beloved in a special dance of ecstasy. Over time, the lantern was no longer an inanimate object in my mind. It had life. I saw the lantern cast Mehera's shadow as she moved around the room, hands clasped by her chin. Sometimes her head faced heavenward, at times bowed in surrender. In these moments, she was in his company. Mehera would not lament the lack of his love or say Baba was not present with her. She lived knowing she was always in his presence. Although she missed his physical form and his physical touch, she seemed to keep Baba ever present by breathing life into her memories. Mehera remembered his scent and recalled how his hair danced like a living crown on his head as the sun shone through it, each hair lifted in the breeze. Love can be ever present because of our deep connection and ties with each other. Meher Baba has told us, love begets love. I saw this truth as I watched Mehera move from one image of her beloved to another in unhurried meditation. This is an aside. This is not in what I wrote. but actually it might be needed to be added, because people who may not know how the Mandali lived yet, or are new to Baba, or are just reading his words and haven't gotten to how the Mandali lived, or their duties and stuff. Where was I going with this? Oh, this is where I learned to audibly, out loud, talk to Baba's pictures.
Yeah.
And this is why they're all over my car as well, because I'll curse Baba for having that person cut me off and nearly causing an accident, because Baba saved me from the accident. So he gave me that gift, so I can't curse the person if I see that as a gift from Baba. So I early on tried to see things that were irritating as his gift, but I failed miserably. But every now and then I was successful. So I gave you an easy example. All right. Mehera was always and in all ways in his presence. She embraced him. She touched him in the photos, placing tender kisses in her hands at the end of her fingertips, lightly pressing the tips of her fingertips that she had kissed to his lips. And I have to tell you, and I hope each one of you, including all the men and the children, learn to kiss your fingertips and touch them to Baba's picture, or just to kiss the picture, because I've been known to pick up a picture and kiss it and hold it. So anyway, this is what blew my mind. She touched him in his photos, placing tender kisses in her hands at the end of her fingers, lightly pressing the tips to his lips. At times she would pick up a framed photo and kiss Baba, a kiss so tender it gently caressed the image as it converged in love's joy and intimacy. In the moment, she was in his company, and a few times I heard glass shatter as her lips touched the frame, and I witnessed, and I'm not saying it happened, none of the stuff I'm saying has happened. Everything happened in illusion, so I don't want anybody making any claims that I'm not making claims of myself. It may have happened, it may not have happened, doesn't matter, it was all illusion what I saw. I choose in illusion to believe I saw it, but it doesn't mean I saw it, it was all illusion. But in my head, I saw it, in my memory, in my mind, in my heart. So, as she gently caressed the image and it converged in love's joy and intimacy, she was in his company. But when in the moment she's in his company, I heard the glass shatter as her lips, I heard the glass shatter as her lips touched the frame and sparks flew into the room. And this is after smelling the tuberose. So either Baba was expecting it or just infusing Mehera with such incredible love and joy and divinity, unimaginable. But anyway, I heard the glass shatter. And when she retired to her room, I got up to look at the frame. I had enough guts to do that. I can't believe, and I was 24, and the shy side of me is on that mattress. I don't have little Vesta there because little Vista doesn't. I mean, little Vista's part of me now. She's not like a separate little thing. So anyway, I remember thinking it was her divine kiss that made that framed photograph totally whole, because when I looked at it, there was no shattered glass. It was as if it had never been touched or moved or whatever. But I heard the shattered glass. I heard it hit the floor. I was smelling the tuberose, and I saw that spark fly out of it and envelop Mehera. But like I say, illusion. Don't forget. It's like and here's why I'm saying this, and I never used to have to really say this. But I was telling someone the other day, telling someone several months ago about this experience that I had, being totally sleep deprived and in excruciating pain, where, Baba was telling me he was there for me, and everything was coming from him, going through me, and he was there with me taking it. When I said that to somebody called somebody up, a friend of mine who called me and told me and said, Baba broke his silence with Vesta. What the hell would Baba break his silence with me for? And first of all, it never happened. It would never happen. And of this, I'm absolutely sure. So please don't please nobody say Baba visited Baba or Vesta's having visions. Please don't do that. It may be true, it may not. It's all illusion. And happening to me means nothing. It's happening to all of us. We just have to pay attention and be very aware that nothing happens to one of us without happening to each of us. Baba's grace and compassion allow us to be captured by the warden of love's penitentiary, to be held prisoner for eternity. I love that feeling of being his prisoner and an eternity sentence, because you never let a prisoner out for eternity, right? Vow to never seek a reprieve from this sentence, but to ask to be granted strength to burrow deeper into his recesses. Seek asylum in this sweet and savory confinement. Become the unrepentant captive, love's intimate. Excuse me, I haven't even had dinner yet. His close ones did. As I watched Mehera, I remember thinking this must be the promised rapture I was witnessing. I was being bathed in milk and honey infused with exotic spices. After a while, and when done recalling her day, expressing her love for her beloved, Mehera bowed, both hands cradling her face. She bade him a good and restful night. After kissing her hand, she offered these tender gestures to Baba, bowing them gently to his direction. The sounds of the shuffle of her slippers on the stone as she retired to her, actually it was Farsi tile, as she retired to her room and to bed, told me all was right in every universe and day was now done. And for those of you who can visualize or want to pull up an image of the entrance to Baba's house, as you enter the wood French doors that open up in, the photograph that she would usually, almost always, end up with was to the right of that first room out of Mehera and Mani's room, where you would walk through to the other door to the passageway at the kitchen. And it's the first framed photograph of Baba to the right of that. And I believe it's still there. I don't think anything's been changed. So as I watched Mehera, I remember thinking this, okay, the day was now done. I have come to terms that we may never get over missing the physical presence of someone we love and when they are no longer in our daily lives or no longer earthbound. As time passes, we come to experience that special bond in different ways. People have loved and been loved by us, have shared in a give and take during their time on our. These are my thoughts. This isn't what Baba said. So please don't take this. And I know I've asked Jasmine Patel to correct anything if I don't do it at the time. But what I'm saying here are my thoughts being expressed, not Baba's words. So I want to be very, very clear about that. This is just my sentiment. People who have lost someone who has moved on, but I do admit I no longer feel like I have lost someone who has moved on, but I do admit reaching out and touching them, holding them and being held. At times I miss their scent, hearing their footsteps, their voice, their breathing at night. And these are all the things that Mehera missed. Maybe not breathing at night, but these are difficult things to replace as they are so tactile. We can, however, keep them securely in our hearts when we remember how we locked gazes, shared mischievous grins, or wide-eyed smiles, and enjoyed each other's company and memory. We can recall laughter and tears that we wiped away. We recall hugs. We can envision and relive hugs. We can recall from memory the sweetness of leaning on each other while sitting on the couch, or the beauty of sharing a sunrise on a day filled with promise, or setting sun when a day has anointed our hearts, spilling over the brim with all that is divine. This is what Mehera did with her beloved, keeping memories alive and occasionally revisiting special moments in the present time. It gave her comfort when her heart was so terribly aching. Those first nights I lay in complete silence and utter stillness on that thin mat in the living room. My heart beat wildly in my chest, blood rushing through my being as I captured every beautiful movement Mehera made in the divine romantic dance she had with her beloved before retiring for the day. Oh, the celestial orchestra that played in my mind, the graceful movement she made, the shy tone in her voice as she spoke with him. My life force echoed in my ears like a river down a mountainside from high up in the Himalayas. Mesmerized by what I was witnessing, I began to understand there is a oneness with divine love, and it grows when nurtured. Love is an active exercise, obligation, and duty. Its beauty a gift to be shared with each other. Again, in the context of what Bob has taught us, but these are my words and how I'm explaining it in this, just because I want other people to understand that we each have that capability. It's not just what he wants from us, but he wants from us because he knows we have it to give to him, and we have to find that. Give it from your left hand into your right hand and toss it up to him, not back to yourself.
Ah,
And this is a good lesson I learned in that experience I had, Jeff. So I think it might be worth me to tell it someday.
Yeah. But Vesta, it's midnight here.
It's 2 minutes. All I need is 2 minutes.
Okay, sure, okay.
I'm gonna finish. I'm gonna finish right on time by His grace. He's showing me again that He was right here with me, and I didn't screw up too badly.
Okay, good.
Okay, I knew this. Love is an active exercise, an obligation, and a duty. It's beauty to be gifted and shared with each other. Arnavas would always remind me that all love comes from him and returns to the source. I knew this to be true as I listened to Mehera's longing being put into intimately whispered words. The Mandali, especially Mehera, his beloved, showed us all that we are in his presence every moment. I bear witness to this divine truth, as we all do, this sacrament at his altar in our hearts, this covenant with the Lord. One more minute. Many times a lesson learned long ago takes on a new meaning when remembered with a newfound understanding of life's intricate prison refractions, of its subtle nuances. And because of beloved Meher Baba's Mandali, especially his Mehera, we know in any given moment that our beloved is ever present in our lives. He is our true and constant companion. He showed us this during the new life, of which, and this is an aside, Rick Chapman a few years back reminded me, if you can't live the new life, at least every day, try and put your big toe in it. It is through love's touch and God's providence that his holy scripture can be written in heavily. Okay, I love this last paragraph. It is through love's touch and God's providence that his holy scripture can be written and inscribed in heavenly calligraphy on our soul forevermore. I just love that image that God gave me. And you want to know why I love it so much? Because when I was writing this, Rosalie and I haven't been in touch for quite a while. Rosalie is one of the loves of my life. She helped bring my parents to Baba, and that's another story that's too beautiful. So let me finish here because it's 9 o'clock. How great our fortune to live our lives blessed by Meher Baba's Nazar, which he bestows on each of his lovers. In fact, he just bestows it on everyone. He has framed our life in spiritual knowing that in each moment we are in his company. I will never abandon you. Constant companionship is Meher Baba's covenant with each of us. As Mehera would say, enjoy to the fullest. Avatar Meher Baba Ki Jai. Questions?
Beautiful. Well, what we're going to do is, if we can get you to come back, because like I say, we're on the East Coast here, and it's it's like after midnight. But what a beautiful, intimate glimpse into Mehera's evenings with Baba. Thank God you were there, and you depicted it so vividly. I mean, that's breathtaking, and I know you'll have that. Well, that'll one day be in print, so people can read what.
Do you know what? Just as an aside, this will all be in my book.
Yeah.
And you want to know what I titled it? It's kind of funny. The gates into heaven are painted green.
Are paved in green.
No, painted in green.
Oh, painted in green.
The Agony and Ecstasy of Mercy. It's the green gates of Meherazad that I'm naming my book.
Yeah,
The
beautiful.
gates into heaven are painted green. Agony and Ecstasy of Mercy.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
hopefully Bob is going to give me enough time to finish it, because I've written 8 stories. Mehera and Helen Hill, Renee Busanich, Marianne Barnhart, and her group of women who are caring for her all have notes on stories as I'm talking with them that come up that I haven't written, and I've got at least 50 more. So I've
Yeah.
got a book that I hope I have enough time to write, so that people get glimpses of Mandali, because each one of them have told me at different times repeatedly, do not let them make us into saints or holy people. Do not let them make us into archetypes. We were human beings. You had relationships with us. But for God's sake, don't say anything until after we're all gone.
Yeah.
Which I thought was pretty
Yeah.
funny.
Well, that's
I want to end with this, Jeff, and it's very important. We've all had experiences that people who come after us,
ooh.
I don't know whether we met the Mandali personally or not. We need to be writing these down and sending them to Meher Archives, the beloved archives, any group we can. These need to be read by people who come after, so they can develop their own relationships with the Mandali, and no one ever, ever dare turn them into what they weren't.
Yeah. Well, let's
Anyway,
have a
that's just
few
something.
moments of silence
Oh,
before we go on.
Jeff,
And- yes.
I just want to say one thing to Vesta. I haven't seen her since 1975, so I just want to send her big Chibaba and love. I was in India when she arrived, and I saw her there, and Marianne and Laura when they came. So I just want to say, Chibaba, Vesta. I haven't seen you since then. You really impressed me when you were in India. So I have to say that you really, I always took you as a leader when I saw you there first back then. So Chibaba, loved.
Yeah.
And thank you for tolerating me.
Yeah. Hey, so let's have let's have a few moments of silence. Well, just 1 second. Rosalie, have you got one of those quotes from Bob, or just and then we'll have this moment of silence. Any of the quotes that come to you?
Yeah. Give me 1 second of your whole existence, and I will give you more of that which I have to give, and which I am given continually in every ordinary and extraordinary way of me as a human, selfless servant of mankind, as love.
Beautiful. Okay, this. Jay Baba.
Jeff, I have a question.
Yes.
I have a question.
Yeah.
I know you're recording this.
Yeah.
Okay. Is there time? I saw some hands raised, and if there was a question or a clarification needed, or somebody wanted to say something, do we have time for that, or are we done?
I well,
Can
like I
people
say,
stay afterward, or is there another Zoom?
we're good. Well, I really hope that you will come again, and share more of these times with the Mandali, and they can they'll have plenty of questions for you. Believe me.
Okay.
Yeah.
Excuse me, but is there anything pressing right now that somebody? I'm not asking somebody to ask me, gee, would it dare, eat for lunch? Is there anything that I've said that's caused any consternation, or anything that somebody might need clarification on? Is there anybody that has that kind of a?
I don't know if anybody does, but I think you were very clear and vivid with all that you said.
Okay.
I mean, this was really, you took us on a journey.
Are you serious?
Yeah, I mean this was really very rich and and all of these stories. I mean, you were right there. I mean, your memory is phenomenal. All of the all of those times with the Mandali and the exchanges, and I know you have plenty of stories of interactions that you had, things that Goher said, things that Mehera said, that would be very interesting. So if you come next time, and then if you can share these interactions, these exchanges you had with the women Mandali and the men Mandali, we would love to hear.
Okay. And all the women that are on here, you need to check into Maris Tea, because I'm going to start talking at Maris Tea. They bring up more memories, and it's more of a free for all.
Yeah.
And then Jeff, I'll send you the stories I've written so far. There are 8 of them like this, and you can pick which one you want next.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, like I say, just even your memories
Yeah.
are even just said informally are just fantastic.
And now you see why I'm taking this medical issue as a spiritual experience, because I haven't thought about these things for a long time until I've been sitting in my room for 6 months by myself with no visitors, looking
Yeah.
at Baba's picture, and this chemo and radiation has made me so vulnerable that my memory box is wide open and all kinds of stuff is coming to the
Well,
surface, and I'm writing it down.
yeah. Well,
Hey,
fantastic.
Baba,
Well,
my darling.
anyway, thank you very, very much. That was just wonderful, and we're going to all go into cyberspace and meet in that oneness.
Maris Tea happens every other Tuesday, so it won't be this Tuesday, it'll be the following. Check our calendar.
And Betty,
So
if
now,
you
wait a minute. So if
Sorry,
these
Val.
are not allowed at Maris Tea,
Oh,
is it recorded
Uh,
so we can
Yeah.
peek in? Is it recorded?
No, That's not-
Will
Ralph.
you be sure and record
Ralph,
that
Ralph.
at Maris Tea, please?
Well, Ralph, just like the women aren't invited when the men get together up in Northern California.
I'm sorry.
Yeah. It's a
I did-
women's tea, and the women don't get invited to the men's gathering up in Northern California either.
hey, and Betty,
The men don't have stories to share like you do, though, Vesta.
Well,
I wanted to hear any, whatever.
hey, Betty, can you get a
Robert.
copy of this
yeah.
to Vesta?
Yes, I'll do it. Copy the chat, and the link will go up. Yeah, I'll let her know
Yeah.
when the link is up.
Yeah, but like
Send me dinner when you do.
Yeah.
even if what she said was transcribed, it would make a beautiful book. You know, I mean,
Right.
they're just the colorfulness of the whole
Not many
thing.
people have had that kind of access to them. It's amazing.
Yeah.
I want to ask a question. So, were you able to emotionally put yourself there and experience it, at least on some levels? Because that was the
Yeah.
goal.
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
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 Good.
Yeah. Jay Bob.
Thank you, Vesta.
Thank you,
And
Vesta.
Rosalie,
Thank you.
I'll call you in the next couple days.
Yeah.
I'll call you in the next couple days, Rosalie.
Yeah.
Okay. Good.
Okay.
Jai
Vesta.
Baba.
Jay
Baba.
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 Avatar, Meher Baba.
Baba. Baba ki jai.
Avatar, Meherabad
Baba.
ki jai.
Baba ki jai.
Jai Baba, thank you.
Hey,
Thank you.
Baba. Sleep well. Vesta, you be sure and get some sleep.
Nazreen, you want to say Jai Baba?
Avatar Meher Baba ki jai. Jai Baba, Jai Baba.
Yeah.
Uh,